So we're going to move on to some exam style questions now. And the first question is the type of thing you should have seen before. So this is where we're given that S is equal to D over T. And this is where S stands for speed, D stands for distance, and T stands for time. And we want to know what would the formula be if we wanted to calculate distance. So let's write down what we have. So if we know that speed is equal to distance over time, and we want to know what distance is, then what we want to do is get D on its own. And to get D on its own, we would have to times both sides by T, so that we end up with T over T, which is 1, which would just leave us with a D. So this means we have S times T is equal to D times T over T, and then this would simplify to S times T is equal to D. So therefore D is equal to S times T, which means distance is equal to speed multiplied by time, which is our final answer. And the next question is asking something similar, but this time we want to know what the formula would be if we wanted to calculate time. So we'll write down what we were given at the start. We've got speed is equal to distance over time. So we first want to get rid of the fraction so that t is not in the denominator. So if we times both sides by t, we'll get st is equal to d. And then we want to divide both sides by s so that t is on its own. So we should end up with t is equal to d divided by s. So hopefully you can realise how easy it is to switch those around. We can literally just switch the s and the t. And this means we have a final answer that t is equal to d over s, which means time is equal to distance over speed. So we'll move on to question 2, and it asks us to rearrange a is equal to pi r squared to make r the subject. So hopefully you realise this is the formula for area of a circle. So if we have a is equal to pi r squared, so we need r on its own, so we need to divide both sides by pi, so we have a over pi is equal to r squared. And then since we have r squared and we need r, well, if a value was to be squared, then in order to get to what the original value was, we would have to square root it. So this would mean that if r squared is equal to a over pi, then r must be equal to the square root of a over pi. And then whenever we square root something, it means that there's always two possible values it could be. It could either be the positive version or the negative version. So I'll just explain this over here. So if we have minus 1 times minus 1, this would give us 1. And if we have 1 times 1, then this would also give us 1. And this is because a minus times a minus is a positive. So this means we have the positive version or the minus version. So if we have x squared is equal to 4, then in order to figure out what x is, we would square root both sides so that we have the square root of x squared is equal the square root of 4, which would give x is equal the square root of 4. But because there's two different values that we can square in order to get 4, as we have 2 squared which is 4 and minus 2 squared which is 4, we would have to state the positive and negative value as our answer. So this is why whenever we have to square root something, we should always put plus or minus the square root, as there'll always be a plus and a minus answer. So the answer in our case is that r is equal to plus or minus the square root of a over pi. Now question 3 asks us to rearrange y equals mx plus c to make x the subject, but it's asking us to circle our answer this time. So it's only worth 1 mark, and we'll get that 1 mark by circling the correct answer. But it's always good just to do some working out so we can guarantee that we've got the correct answer. So if we start with our formula, which is y equals mx plus c, and then we want to subtract c from both sides so that the mx term's on its own. So we have y minus c is equal to mx. And then to get x on its own, we need to divide both sides by m. So we have x is equal to y minus c divided by m. And then we want to see if this is in our list. So it's the third one in our list, so we just give that a circle and we'll get our 1 mark. So now we're going to move on to some past exam questions. So some of these questions you might have seen before in the substitution video. It's just because they'll use both techniques, but we'll just go through them anyway so you can see the rearranging element of it. So the first question tells us that a company uses this formula to work out the cost, £8, of a taxi ride. So we have A is equal to 4 plus 1.8 M plus B. And this is where £4 is a fixed charge, M is the number of miles travelled, and B pound is the charge for booking online. Now it tells us that Claire booked a taxi online and travels 8 miles, and she pays £20 altogether. How much is the charge for booking online? So if we write down our formula we have A is equal to 4 plus 1.8 M plus B, and it tells us that she travelled 8 miles, so we know that M is equal to 8, and that she pays £20 altogether, so we know A is equal to 20. And what we want to find out is what the charge is for booking online, so we want to find the value for B. So the first thing we should do is rearrange this formula for B, so we have B is equal to some stuff. So we should have B is equal to, and then we'll have A minus 4 minus 1.8 M. And then we can substitute our value for A and M into our new formula. So this is going to be equal to, so if A is 20, we have 20 minus 4 minus, and then we've got M as 8, so we have minus 1.8 times 8, and then this gives 20 minus 4, which is 16, minus, and we have 1.8 times 8, which is 14.4, so we have 16 minus 14.4, and then this is equal to 1.6. So this means B is equal to 1.6, so in our answer box we can write B is equal to £1 and 60p. So the next question tells us that there's a formula for the amount of water needed to cook rice, and we have W is equal to 1.5 R plus 0.5, and that W is the number of cups of water needed, R is the number of cups of rice cooked, and it's asking us how many cups of water are needed to cook 7 cups of rice. So we have W is equal to 1.5 times R plus 0.5, and it's telling us that we're cooking 7 cups of rice, and R is the number of cups of rice to be cooked, so we know that R is equal to 7, so this is equal to 1.5 times 7 plus 0.5, which is equal to 11, so we need 11 cups of water to cook 7 cups of rice. Now part B of the question asks how many cups of rice can be cooked with 20 cups of water. So the formula we have is W is equal to 1.5 R plus 0.5. And we need to work out how many cups of rice can be cooked with 20 cups of water. So we need to rearrange this formula for R. So we have W is equal to 1.5 R plus 0.5. So this means we have W minus 0.5 is equal to 1.5 R. And then we need to get R on its own. So we have R is equal to W minus 0.5 divided by 1.5. And then if we substitute W as 20, we have 20 minus 0.5 over 1.5. And this is equal to 13. So R is equal to 13, which means 13 cups of rice can be cooked with 20 cups of water. So on our answer line, we'll write R is equal to 13. Now the rest of the questions are quite similar to the ones we've already done, so just give them a go and then use the questions we've already done as a guide if you need to. But you should notice there's 2 types of questions when it comes to rearranging. So we have one question which is a wordy question, where it gives you a formula and tells you some information. And then we also have the other types of questions which just ask you to rearrange some formula in terms of a certain variable. So rearrange for X or for Y or for whatever letter they want to use. So these are sort of the 2 questions that come up in the exam, so just make sure you're comfortable with both. But I hope you found this video useful somehow and that you understand the 3 steps we need in order to rearrange equations. But that's it for this video on rearranging equations.